I would be surprised our edits will probably be different, obviously, but the tools and everything are going to be similar.
Yep.
I don't know. This is where we get to see where the sausage gets made by Ron.
That's a fact.
I don't make good sausage.
He probably opens it up in like iMovie first.
Yeah, you guys better buckle up your seatbelts. You're about to go on the ride of your life.
Are we going to be hawking the Jason Loftus Lightroom presets on this?
On that Eagle, we can.
I can bet we could sell dozens.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't exist. That's the problem.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
Well, they will when they buy them.
Right. You know what I'm going to do the first time around? I've got some filters pulled up, some presets pulled up. I'm just going to, here's how I edit. Boom. Spring breeze. Done.
Good night.
Next.
Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed Podcast. We're going to... Sorry, that was a little aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to yell.
Half hour in. That's essentially the middle of the show.
Just drink a 5-hour energy.
Oh, man.
We got more of this to come. I was just judging by the looks on everybody's faces and thought maybe I should do that over.
When we all backed away from the mics and our
Yes.
eyes went big.
And
My eyes were like
Startled.
$7.
everybody's eyes were just white. Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed Podcast. We got a full boat again this evening. We've got the crew tonight. Michael, Brandon, Jason, Drew. How you guys doing? In that order.
Oh, I'm doing good.
I'm good.
Doing great.
Quite well, thank you. Dang it, I messed it
Drew,
up.
you went out of order.
I was going around the screen.
Okay, so before we get into the show, everybody's all, the national media has got everybody whipped into a fury about all this cold weather.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the legitimate cold weather would be you, Drew. What's it like up there?
Well, it's a little chilly. It is blizzard warning, but I don't think the blizzard's actually started. And our wind chill is right at minus 37. So pretty normal.
Pretty normal.
I don't know what everybody's complaining about.
That's what I'm wondering.
They just make up names to make it sound worse. So you've got the bomb. What is it? Bomb cyclone.
That does sound scary.
Bomb cyclone and the Arctic blast and Arctic depression that are coming to Wyoming. But I'm telling you, it's supposed to be in the 60s below zero with the wind chill for one day. And everybody has got the shelves on the grocery store cleared, and it's one day. And then it's going to be back up in the 30s again.
Yeah, I like how the weather people here in Colorado, they'll put up all the weather people add on their graphics. Now make sure you wear your mittens and a scarf and layer up. It's like, are people really that they need that information?
Yes, they are. That's why you have warnings on the coffee cups at McDonald's and stuff, right?
All right. If you need warnings like that, please send your comments to Michael Mauro. We'll make sure that we get that out to you. But I don't think anybody that listens to our show is going to need warnings like that. You're all pretty adept in the outdoors. So, but it drives me crazy.
Although I will say my buddy Kevin K is making me wonder.
Uh-oh. Even got a call out on that one.
I did. And I have to bring it up. Yes, Kevin is a stud. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He's an amazing kid. He just gets after. He's not a kid. He's a guy. But I can call him a kid. But he just got this amazing mountain goat photo.
Oh, yeah.
And it's worth talking about. Because in his post, you guys ought to go check out his post and read the story. Because he talks about what it took for him to get this image. And long story short, he had a mild case of frostbite and lost the feeling in his fingers for a couple days. And took him about 3 weeks, he said, to get all of his feeling back. And, put himself at risk for some potentially long-term injuries, right? So I kind of got on him and chewed him out and said, listen, dude, I understand what you're doing, but don't put yourself at risk, unnecessarily. You're going to need those fingers to snap those photos, right? So he said he learned from it, and he gets it. He's all about it. He'll never do that again. But yeah, just
But he
so
did get the shot.
he did get the shot, and it's pretty incredible. So
Yeah, it's pretty epic for a wintertime goat shot. He definitely put in the work to get that. And he said we had him on the show, about a year ago, I think. And he said that was his goal. And he's definitely been pushing the envelope as far as getting up in the winter conditions to get to those goats. And he's making it happen. Give him that. Nice job, Kevin. But keep your fingers.
Well, I've seen some on our Northern Lights trips. I've seen some folks come up with some interesting cold adaptations. Had a drunk lady from Texas one year decide that she was going to try and those toe warmers with the adhesive,
Mm-hmm.
and she ended up sticking those all over on any piece of exposed skin, like her face and everywhere. And she was drunk enough that I'm sure it all made sense in her head. But as soon as she walked outside, that adhesive kind of contracts and they just fell off.
Our friend and compadre Mark Raycroft does that sober with the toe warmer.
he doesn't have an excuse.
Well, it's cold, but it keeps him warm.
It works. Yeah.
Let's, again, back to Kevin. Nice work. Watch yourself out in the elements, but don't panic.
Yep.
Only reason I even
brought it up. Sorry. Only reason I even brought it up is because I care about you, buddy. So
millions and millions and millions and millions of people have gotten through a bomb cyclone before us, and I'm sure we're all going to survive.
One day. We can keep saying that. It's one day.
Yeah.
What happened to the polar vortex?
Yeah, that too. That's the other one.
It's going to be in the teens in Texas.
It's not the first time it's happened, boys and girls.
I did see that. Jeff and Ange live down in Corpus Christi or something like that. I saw it was going to be 17 down there. I thought about sending them a text and just joking around to see if they had got their winter clothes back out.
See if they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
See, the problem down there, though, we were just talking to a guy I work with down there. And the problem down there is they actually have sprinkler systems and stuff that keep going year round, and they don't clean them out because of stuff like that. So if they're not insulated, which most of them aren't, then they break pipes. They get all kinds of problems. So even if it's only a day, they can have some significant issues because of the way they're structured and they're set up, But yeah, so it does create problems for sure, but because they're just not prepared for it.
Location.
Yeah.
Right.
There's positives, but there's also
they'd be making fun of me if I was down there in the Texas heat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In July.
Which I'm not. I've picked a good spot.
Let's get to the show content tonight. Tonight we're going to we've done this show before, but we are the only ones that got to see it. So we've got some better software now. And I will apologize to those of you who sent us your images 2 years ago. And we did edit them. And in fact, we've done it twice. We did it as a group. Then I did an independent one that we can throw out there on YouTube. You can look at the old way to do things. But tonight we're going to go through some of the new tools in Lightroom and how we can hopefully make your workflow a little bit faster, a little more simplified, and maybe just give you a couple different things to think about. That being said,
there's no we to this. It's just you and Jason. Drew and Brandon and I are here for commentary. We're color commentary.
Yeah.
We established early on that we are just here to talk shit.
Yeah. I think you've all heard that up to this point already.
You two are the Lightroom wizards.
They are here.
We are here to learn too.
Make Jason and I's jobs less simple
and interesting.
At what point do you just get frustrated and delete the photos? Like that's the step I'm at.
Well,
you don't delete.
I do.
Man,
I do.
I'm doing it wrong.
I just hit the auto button.
That's actually not a bad little trick.
Mike's tutorial is going to be fairly short.
Very short.
Take
All
it
right.
right the first time.
So we've got a couple leopard images that we're going to start out with, and they're both from JL Photography. Again, they were sent to us in April of 2020. We decided to do this show because we were, a lot of us were homebound or working from home. And so it was a good time to do an editing show. And then we did it. And now Lightroom's had about 4 different iterations of changes since then. And now the things that we could do then that took us 10 minutes, now you can do what, Jason, about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
It's pretty fast. So Jason's going to start us out with the first one. Again, JL Photography. Jason, go ahead and share your screen.
So now this is going to be a little odd for me because I'm not used to like talking about what I'm doing while I'm trying to do it. But here's the raw image. When I look at an image like this, the first thing I'm going to do is one of the things that's a pet peeve for me is I try to make sure my horizons are straight. So if you look at this, I love the grid that when you do the crop tool, it really gives you a feel for if that horizon is straight. So I'm going to do some cropping, how I might crop this image. Maybe just kind of a starting point. I'm going to try to straighten that horizon a touch here. Maybe something like that. Yeah, maybe a little wider.
When you apply that crop, do you just hit escape and it goes back to what it was, or you just go into the tool again and you can make the adjustment?
Right, so that's a good point. I'm sorry. Again, I'm not used to this. So if you look up here, they took the done tool or the done button away for these tools. So what I've learned is you have to do is basically just go back up and hit the tool again. So up here you can see these are some of my filters and my different tools, and at the top right, and this is the crop tool. So when I'm done with the crop and I think I'm where I want it, I just come back up and hit that crop tool, and it clears it back out.
Or you can just double click on it and it will turn the crop tool off as well.
You mean like on the image?
Uh-huh.
See, I'm learning. Oh, look at that. That's even faster. See? We really should let Ron do this show. We all could learn.
This all makes me wonder what I do, don't I? Think, yeah. It's all muscle memory. It's hard.
And then one more question before we go too much further. All of this is non-destructive editing too, right? So that means that any change you make is not affecting the original file.
That's correct.
So you can always go back to the very beginning and start over, right?
Yep, I can go back here. I'll just do it real quick. You can hit this button down here. I just hit reset, and I'm back to my original image. I think I can undo that. There you go.
And right now, this is Lightroom Classic.
Correct. That's what I use.
The most current version.
This is the most current version. You can see over here on my left, I actually have quite a few presets I used to use quite a bit. I've kind of gone away from using them. I really kind of just like my own thing, but if you are somebody that's interested in using the presets, they're a good starting point for a lot of people. You can see some of these over here on the left, what Spring Breeze does. If you kind of scroll through them, what's cool is it just shows you a preview of what that filter is going to do. But I have my own ideas about how I would like to edit this image. So instead of using that, I'm just going to come over here and kind of show you. My first thing I try to do is like look at the color tones and I look at the exposure. This is kind of a tricky image because it's kind of backlit, looks like kind of middle of the day, kind of harsher light. But I'll probably take my highlights down and I'll bring the exposure up just a little bit. And then I might play with my purples here a little bit just because it looks like it's a little green for me, for my taste. You can see I'm just making small adjustments to the tint and small adjustments to the temperature. And I'm literally just sliding the bar a little bit, just kind of playing with it a little bit just to see what might look good to me. And I'll probably come back and play with that more later, to be honest. You can see here there's a lot of dark areas. I want to try to bring some shadows out on this. So I'm going to probably crank up my shadows a touch. Try not to make it look too unrealistic. Probably leave my whites where they're at, my blacks where they're at. I'm not going to mess with any of my clarity, texture, or dehaze right now because I'm going to take this image into denoise, into topaz. If you see me zoom in here, you can see it's a fairly noisy image because it was taken at 2000 ISO. I'm sure that was just because of the light conditions, right? At this point, I'll probably just go ahead and take this into topaz. And then after I'm done with topaz, I can come back and do some of the other things with it. So I have it set up in my Lightroom. So all I have to do is hit Control-Alt-Edit, and that'll bring up this window for me. I'll hit this edit button here. When it brings it up, I'm gonna have to drag this over into the other window so you can see what I'm doing. I told Drew this was super fast, so I hope it performs. So there's the denoise tool in Topaz, and I would just choose this to be on auto at this point. I found for me and what I do, the low light seems to be the best choice for me. That's what I use most of the time. But you can see now that that's really made a difference. I hope you can see. It's really made a difference and you can just run the slider. What I love about Topaz now is it does such a good job of cleaning up all that area. So you can see what it did there. And for the most part, it does a really good job of keeping the detail and the texture and the fur and stuff on the animals without softening that too much. But it takes all that noise out of the backdrop and in the other areas of the image. So when I'm done with that, I'll just hit apply.
So while it's doing that, Jason,
Yep.
you can actually denoise in Lightroom too, but you feel like Topaz is a better tool?
Absolutely. I hardly ever use the denoise anymore in Lightroom. I think Topaz is way more effective. So now that I've cleaned that up, I've got a really clean image to work with. And now I'll start messing with like my clarity slider a little bit. I kind of have some settings that I tend to fall to. And believe it or not, most of my images end up getting edited very similarly with the same kind of amount of vibrance and the amount of saturation and things like that. On this image here, I'll probably take my shadows up just a touch more, probably mess with my color temp just a little bit more. And then I'm going to show you guys another trick here that I like to do. I still will use my detail tool after I'm done with that and see if I need to add any more. But if I do, it gets really kind of grainy because Topaz also does some sharpening as well and adds detail. But I'll try to mask this a little bit and just try to add a little bit of sharpening to the animal itself.
Hey, Jason, could you describe what button you pushed?
So I held down the Alt button. And when I click on that tool, if I unclick, it takes it away. But if I hold the Alt button down on a PC, then I hit that and I can adjust how much of the image that affects. So that masking option just says, don't do that sharpening that I just did to anything but the areas that are highlighted.
Keyboard shortcut on a Mac would be the Option button instead of the Alt button.
Everybody knows me and my darker backgrounds. I mean, this was just the conditions this day. But now they've got some cheats built in, right, that we can do. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to use this, the masking tool. That's this little circle button right here. And you can see they've got some options. You can brush it. They got linear gradient, radial gradient, range for different types of color range, luminance, so on and so forth. And then you've also got this objects, or you got subject or sky or background. So I'm going to choose the subject on this one. I actually like that it got some of the tree too, because I probably don't want the tree to be darkened as well. So what I do is I come up here on the subject and I click on that and I hit invert. So what it's done is it's highlighted my animal. I don't want to make the changes to the animal. I want to make the changes to the surrounding areas. So now I click on that and I'm going to hit this subtract button here because I'm going to clean up the rest of the tree really fast. And it really doesn't take that long. This is crazy how fast it is with these new tools. Be careful on your edges. You got to just, you don't want to go crazy on the edges, but it's pretty good. It's got the
edge detection
on. It sees a difference, and unless you get aggressive, it'll probably not really be an issue. But I just try to get most of that off. Careful around the plants and stuff, because if you get too crazy, you'll get the plants looking kind of goofy. That's probably good enough for what I'm doing. And then I can start messing with the backdrop in that, right? So you can see I can start to take that down. That's getting too much because it's starting to look unnatural. I can slide my clarity way down or way up. When I'm trying to highlight something else, I try to take my clarity down just a little bit. I actually want to bring my highlights up a touch, maybe my shadows down. This is the process, guys, right? So a lot of it's just playing around, and you don't have to do too much, right? You also can mess with your temperature of your background. So maybe I want it to be a little bit more sunny, but I didn't want that to affect the color of the tree and the leopard. So now all these adjustments I'm making are only affecting the backdrop or the areas that are highlighted. And then overall, I think I'm going to just bring my exposure up just a touch, just to fine tune it a little bit. Maybe my shadows just a touch. And just kind of look at my blacks here to see if I want to do anything with that. Actually, I want to take my blacks up. And then I probably will also do a little bit. I usually do a little bit of vignetting. I just like the effect that it kind of gives, but I don't want to go too much that it doesn't look natural. I don't want you to really notice it, you know what I mean? But I want to add some of it. And that's under the effects over here. If you look at that, you got some different effects. I don't use many of these except for this, the amount tool, the amount slider. You can go both ways. You can go, white. You can go dark. I just try to do it just a little bit to kind of draw more attention to the image or to the subject. And then from there, what I do is I take it into Photoshop. So I'm going to do that really quick.
Before you take it into another program here, so I was just wondering, at what point in this process have you already decided where this photo is destined? Is it destined for social media? Are you printing this out for a calendar? Is this for somebody's living room kind of things? And what are maybe the differences in the workflow that are most obvious if you're editing for, say, social media or versus a big print for somebody's wall?
So honestly, Drew, I take the stance that I don't want to. There's no difference. If I put something on my Instagram page or on my Facebook or on my website, that's an image that I promise you can blow up. We can blow it up as big as you want. It's going to look clean. It's going to look clear. It'll look great in a magazine. It'll look great on your wall and on a metal print. I just care that much about the quality of my images that I don't put anything on my Instagram or share anything that's not of that quality.
Well, and I wasn't necessarily thinking in terms of image quality, but in terms of things like if you're throwing a vignette on this standard crop and then you're going to end up taking it into the Instagram square or things like that. Like I would say, I'm watching you edit this and I would say this is destined for somebody's wall.
Right. So that, I guess that's my point though, is whatever I do on my Instagram page is what the actual print looks. I don't do Instagram crops. I know there's a lot of people that do. But if you look at my page, you'll see there's some wide angle photos on there that are what the actual image looks like. I don't do like a tight crop to focus on the animal for Instagram versus a layout for a wall. So if this was my image, I would leave it just like this. And if I posted it on Facebook or Instagram, it would look just like this. So I know there's a lot of people that do those things differently. It's a great question. But for me, my workflow doesn't change no matter what I'm doing, what I'm using the image for. So now at this point, for me, the shortcut to go into Photoshop, which is cool, is just Control Edit. And if you haven't taken it into another program, it will just open up Photoshop for you automatically. But because this is an image that was taken into another program and then brought back into Lightroom, I just have to hit that edit button again. It's currently opening up Photoshop real quick.
Hey, Jason, is this a process for every image that goes into Photoshop, or is there some that just don't go there?
Most of them come in here. Well, all of them come in here, and I'll show you why. Because the way I do my watermark is set up inside of Photoshop too. You can see my watermark there. I've got it set up as a brush. So most of the time when I come in here, it's going to be, main objective is to say, are there anything in here that's annoying? So for me, I think this is a little distracting, this little area right here. And you can see how good these tools are now. It's insane how well these tools work. But I was able to just move that out of his face. It's not in there. This is a little distracting to me. So I want to take some of this, bigger stuff down. And just to keep the focus on the animal itself. Now, I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in doing this kind of stuff, to each their own. I don't get carried away. I just kind of touch up things that are annoying. Matter of fact, I'm just actually, I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing now. I'm just going around looking at things that are distracting to me and touching them up with this tool. And this is the spot healing brush. Now, another cool brush is this healing brush tool. What's cool about this is you have to if you hit Alt, it sets a target. And so I can actually choose this area here and I just click on it. And now you can see that that's what my brush is it took a copy of that area. So now if I have something over here, and I'll just undo this because I really don't, but to show you the tool, if I want to change the look of an area, I can take this tool and just kind of run it around. You can see what it did there. It just changed the look of that whole area. And these tools are so good now that you used to really have to work at doing something like that in a previous version. But now you can take let's say there is an elephant's butt right here or something, right? And I didn't want that there because it's distracting. I could literally take a I could do this right here and hit Alt, and then come over here and do this, and it'd take that elephant out and be gone, and then I can touch up a little of this area or whatever. So it's incredible what these tools can do now and how quick they are and how powerful they are. But then for me, I do some burning and dodging. For me, I always kind of like to take the dark areas and make them a little darker. So I'm going to do that with this area here, and it just kind of helps make the animal itself stand out a bit. And then I'm going to take and burn it just a little, or dodge it just a little bit. And I'm going to go over that same area because I actually want it to I want the brights to be brighter. You can see what that kind of does to the image. And then I might do that here with the leopard itself too. And I don't want to get carried away because it might look a little bit too phony if you get carried away. But just lightly, and you can adjust all this up here. There's the tools here, and I've got it set at 4%, which is pretty light, which means that as I go over it with my brush, it's not going to dramatically affect the exposure or the brightness. But you can see what that does, right? It makes it look like there's some sun hitting that leopard now, where before it was basically dark and in the shade, right? So it's not carried away. I didn't try to do too much. I don't want to make this brighter back here. I just want to make some of these highlights that are in the other image and the colors, because as you adjust your exposure, right, your colors change too. And if you do some of that brightening, it really can make the main focal of the image kind of pop. That's probably, this is just real quick, rough edit, right? That's probably somewhere where I might land with an image like this. And I probably need to do more work in this area, to be honest, just because it looks a little bit uneven. But I would spend the time normally going through that and just kind of continuing to dodge and burn areas that make sense. And a little trick is I actually got this dodge and burn thing from landscape guys. Landscape guys use the dodging and burning quite a bit throughout their images, and I found it to be very useful for my editing style too. So I would save that as a TIFF. It's just me, I get rid of that the edit thing, and because I'm on a PC, I'm just doing image compression none, and it's for PC, not Macintosh, and hit OK. And then I'm going to go File Shift Alt W is a shortcut to bring up this window here to export the image as a JPEG. So you can see I've got it set at JPEG. I always go the highest quality. I always put my copyright info, contact info, which also includes all the metadata, and you can see the size of from a pixel standpoint where it's at. Then I'll hit export, and I save that as my normal size or my large size image. Then you can see my watermark here. This is where that comes in. I can adjust that, and I can add my watermark. A quick click, and I resize the image to 1600 pixels wide, and then I come over here and change my color bit because I'm shooting in the higher color bit, and you can't save it as a JPEG, or I'm sorry, as a low res JPEG, unless you change it to 8-bit. So I change that to 8-bit, save as PC, and change it to JPEG, and then save, and keep it high quality. And then I'm done. I hit close, and I go back to Lightroom, and I'm ready to start my next image.
Can you do a side-by-side comparison right in Lightroom? It's usually just a hitting a button, right?
So there you go.
Taking it from start to finish, just using some simple tools. And that was a little bit more extravagant edit just because you showed all the way through your Photoshop workflow portion of it as well, and with the topaz. And you guys can see just what a difference, 10, 15 minutes takes. And that would have been, Jason, what? If you didn't have to talk through each step.
5-10 minutes, just because it's like Drew said, most of the time it actually takes a lot longer to think about what I'm doing and talk about it, because most of it's muscle memory at this point.
And you were just putting the watermark on there just to show how you do it. This image is from JL.
Yeah, this is from JL.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I promise we won't be.
You won't be exporting it to your Instagram.
Correct. But yeah, there you go. That's what I would have done. And I'll just say that the listeners out there, whoever's watching, please, if you guys see something I'm doing funky like Ron has through this, I'm open to criticism, feedback. I absolutely want to keep learning. So don't hesitate to reach out and let me teach me some things.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is when Ron does this, he's going to achieve a lot of the same things, but he's probably going to use a different tool to do it, which would be kind of cool to see, right? Because there's no exact way to do this. It's all subjective, and everybody has their tools that they use to achieve the effects that they want to achieve.
Absolutely. But I wish I'd have gotten an image like this while I was in Africa, by the way, too. So
Yeah, that's a crazy opportunity right there. And I just going back, I like I probably would have gone more of a 16:9 because I like the mountain in the background going all the way as it tapers down.
right.
But the crop you did obviously was a little tighter. But I like the fact that all that overhanging stuff up on top. So if it doesn't add to the image, it's taken away. That's kind of the way you need to go in thinking about it. And all that stuff on top, you can't really see where that branch ties into the tree. So it's kind of taken away. And I like the fact that you just cropped it out. You didn't worry about going in and using a masking tool or anything like that to take it out. You just cropped it out.
You know, that's a good point, though, Ron. I actually didn't even see that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because really it's kind of cool how it follows the outline of the tree, the cat, the mountain. Actually, probably would have been better to crop it that 16:9. It's a great point.
Well, and I would say you and Ron both agreed that, you edit it from your heart, and then that is what gets posted on social media. But I would add that, for certain things, it does have a certain benefit. If people are going through at home and they have specific applications or outputs at the end, maybe having that in mind and crafting to a certain specific social media type, or even if it's just something like, what made me think of this again, Ron, was the 16:9. I was like, oh man, that's too small for Instagram. you can't cram that 16:9 across the center of the box, kind of thing. So that it's something that having the output in mind, if you've done all this work to make this beautiful image in 16:9, and then you throw it on social media and you're like, damn, that cat looks small. Just sort of things like that throughout your process, and having the end game in mind. But yeah, that would look good in 16:9.
We've talked about it a little bit, and I think what's hard with Instagram is, we've had situations come up where we know for a fact that the image that was posted was literally a thumbnail size of a wolf or something, and it's on social media, but you could never print that thing. I guarantee it's not printable. And it's like, so what are you trying to do with your Instagram? I think really becomes the question, right? Is it a portfolio, or is it just to try to get some likes and some views and show that you got a thumbnail size image of a wolf?
It's not what you like; it's what the algorithm likes.
Well,
that's a fact, right? But
they don't care what you think anymore.
If you care about the algorithm, yes, it is about what the algorithm likes.
Well, and for those that are interested, that was shot on a Canon 7D with a EF 100-400. The shutter speed was 1/640, and the aperture was, it says f5.7, but I think that's a 5.6 lens. So I don't know why it says 5.7.
ISO 2000.
Yeah. ISO 2000. Yep.
And so it would be the equivalent of shooting it if it was a full frame camera, because the 7D is APS-C sensor. So it'd be the equivalent of shooting at about 140 to 600, and it was at 400. So that would be a 600 equivalent on that shot. All right.
So you could tell he had edits in, like he had a specific goal. Like he wasn't all the way just pegged at the end. Like he definitely was trying to get more habitat in there, and successfully. So I think we need to give a shout out to the person taking that photo, because that was some serious forethought.
Yeah, it's a neat image. It really is.
I'm going to jump into another. It's probably the same cat. Could be the same time frame. I'm just jumping into another image just because I want to show a couple different tools than what Jason covered, or the same tools, just a different way to use them on this cat.
And these are the same photographer?
This is the same photographer. Yep.
And who's that?
JL Photography. We don't have the name, but we would be happy to throw it in the show notes if you would get a hold of us and let us know. So just starting out, obviously getting this shot of this leopard's eyes is incredible. And so I just want to go through, because there are opportunities where we'll get these tight portraits, and I just want to go through a tool that's going to help you with, and I'm just going to cover specifically the eyes. I'll just go through kind of a quick edit on this one. All right, so just a couple quick things. So the same thing Jason did, subject select. I'm just going to see what it does with this cat, because I wasn't sure it would mask him because a lot of those colors are similar. Just going to invert it just like Jason did. Going to decrease clarity. And what I'm trying to do is just add a little bit of bokeh to that background. I really don't want those leaves to be clear. And that's all I'm going to do. Now, the other tool.
You didn't. When you did the selection, it selected the cat, but it also had the branch behind the cat. Do you worry about that?
Right here. No, because the reason that I was doing it was more for these leaves, because I just wanted to decrease clarity on the leaves, because I didn't want that to draw any attention. And we might crop a little bit and help that out as well. But that's the only thing I was after. So I wasn't really concerned about this branch. And it does a pretty good job. So when you go back and use that tool again, so if I just go back into that same mask, and all you have to do is click on the mask after you've established it. So I'm going to drop the texture and clarity completely. And what you're going to notice is, if you look up here, it starts to make everything look a little bit fake. So as Jason talked about, you've got to use these tools in just small increments. You don't want to overuse anything. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty obvious what you did. What I want to show you guys is just another little tool, because when you get an animal's eyes, that's where the focus should be. And so I'm just going to choose a brush, and I'm going to use the bracket keys. The left bracket key will make it smaller, make my brush smaller. The right bracket key will make it larger. So I want to make it a pretty small brush. And then I want to go in. I don't want any feather to this. Wherever I touch it, I want it to impact. And all I'm going to do is go into these eyes. And I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see, because it's going to be subtle. But when you use the brush and you go over here to the effects, and this is just choosing the effect on the brush, I'm going to hit my drop down. So just click on those double arrows right next to custom. And I'm going to go down to iris enhance. And now the only thing that I'm doing is changing the cat's eyes. So I can take the white balance way down. You can see how that just kind of decreases the color in those eyes. I want to add a little bit of pop. So I'm going to take the temperature up, and then I'm going to take the saturation up even a little bit more, because I just want those eyes to pop. I'm going to get out of my brush tool. I'm going to go back to the left side, go all the way to the bottom on the left side to my history. And if you just go back a step, just if you watch those eyes after, it's just a really subtle change. But all you're doing is adding a little pop into those eyes. So you can always go back a step and forward a step, and then you're right back where you were. But that's all I wanted to show on this one. It's a really good image. It's a great portrait. I think anybody would be happy to have had the opportunity to take this shot again. So I'm just keeping it brief on that one. Again, great shot, JL Photography.
And checking him out on Instagram here, and he's from Belgium, and he's got a lot of fantastic birds and very good edits himself. I really like his style. So jlphotography.be on Instagram if you want to give him a follow.
Okay, this red fox shot was sent to us by Kurt Baldwin. Kurt has been a longtime listener to the podcast. And again, this puppy was sent to us back in 2020. So sorry, Kurt, but I love this fox image. And when it was originally sent to me, we can show his edit. He had it cropped in about right here. It was pretty tight. And it's nice. It's nice to have this portrait of a fox. However, I've always been of the opinion that the magic of a fox is in the tail. I kind of liked to leave the tail in the shot completely. The fox has its tongue out, which you may or may not find ideal. It's not as clean, but it does show behavior. Just cleaning that nose off or keeping the ice off the nose. But the first thing you notice on this shot is a little bit underexposed. I like the snow, however, so I'm not going to do a lot to the snow. I just want to primarily impact the fox itself. So we'll go ahead and all I'm going to do is go up and select the subject. Lightroom does a fantastic job of making that selection. And now all I'm going to do is just edit that fox. So the first thing that I know I need to do is just increase the exposure just a little bit. You know, it's only about a third of a stop. Again, the magic of the red fox is in its tail, but it's also in the color. So I'm going to go in and increase saturation. And you can see that already is starting to make that fox pop a little bit. So I just increase the exposure just a little bit. So it's about a half stop now. Now you can see the eyes, just like we just talked about. The eyes on this fox are a little bit dark. And again, you've got a nice up close portrait. So we're going to try to just light those eyes up a little bit. So I'm going to just go up here, click on create a new mask. We'll go down, select brush. I've already got that small brush selected, right? And I'm just going to go in and paint those eyes themselves. And now I'm going to choose Iris Enhance again. And now I want to increase the temperature a little bit more. And I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit more. Now you can see how that's going to make them look fake or start to add some artifacts. So you don't want to go more than a stop. And we're going to work with this a little bit more.
Did you say hit Iris Enhance?
Yeah. So
how did I miss that? Where's that at?
Okay, so you go to your brush tool. So I'll go to mask number 2. Yep. And if I hit show overlay, you can see that I just selected both of those eyes.
Right.
Okay, and then over here on your brush tool menu, most of the time that is just, it's set to default. What I've done is selected Iris Enhance, and that just affects the eyes. And basically it adds some clarity. It adds some, it brings your temperature up.
It's a preset.
It's a preset just for eyes. There's another one, like if you're doing people portraits, it's teeth whitening, and you just click on teeth whitening, brush across the teeth, and it whitens them right up. So
gotcha.
It's better than what's that electronic toothbrush? It's supposed to
Sonicare
change them. Yeah, Sonicare changes two shades.
Well, have you used the tooth whitening on animals?
I haven't had the opportunity very often. I tried it on an elk one time, but I like the color in the ivories because he was bugling right in my face, and you could see his ivories back behind his incisors. So yeah, I mean, it works, but I don't know that I necessarily would.
Did anybody send us any walrus pictures or anything like that we could?
Not yet, but it would work.
Okay.
It would definitely work. All right.
An elephant.
So we're back out. I'm going to increase the exposure just slightly. So obviously, you're shooting on snow. So I think probably what happened here is he exposed right at 0. So when you're shooting on snow, you need to be about 2 stops, a stop and 2/3 to 2 stops brighter. So what you would do is put your meter right on the snow and then set your exposure for 2 stops to the right. And then your fox is going to be exposed perfectly. If you do that, you're going to have to use a slower shutter speed or pump up your ISO, but about 2 stops. Okay. That's a whole nother tutorial. So as you can see right here, the fox is starting to look pretty good. Like the tail, got good color. What I'm going to do though is just go back into this hue, saturation, and luminance. And I'm just going to play with the oranges a little bit. I don't want it to look crazy like that. I'm just playing with them a little bit because I just want them to pop and give that fox its due. The other thing that I'm going to do is go up into shadows because those eyes are still set back a little bit. So you want to pop the shadows, but again, be careful so you don't want to overdo it. I'm only going to about plus 15 max. In fact, probably come back down a little bit. But if we go over and look at where we started and where we ended up, and that was a really quick edit. I think you'll agree that it adds a little bit to the image. Again, like Jason said, add a little bit of vignette, or you can, but with the fox, I tend to go on the lighter side, or excuse me, not with the fox necessarily, but on snow. And then it makes this fox pop a little bit more. And I would round trip this also into Photoshop because this grass here that's kind of out of focus, that is a distracting element. And this blade down here at the bottom, maybe these guys, I would get rid of those, but I would probably leave the rest. Kurt, great shot of that fox, great opportunity. And I think you got yourself a wall hanger, even with the tongue out.
You know, the only thing I might add is this is kind of a fun image to play with, maybe with, you know, having a couple edits in your arsenal.
Without a doubt.
I might do one like you said, Ron, just take out some of the distracting grass, and then I'd probably do another one where I take out all the grass, just because it's kind of fun to just have that pure white on, you know, fox on pure white. So anyway, just some food for thought there too. But that's about all I would have maybe.
Yeah, and we can do this. Lightroom doesn't do as good a job removing this stuff as Photoshop does, but it's doable.
It's basically the same tool though, right?
No, it's a similar tool. Photoshop is analyzing each pixel. It's going to give you down to the pixel level what it interprets using artificial intelligence as matching pixels, basically. Lightroom, as you'll see, so I just chose that. So once I make the selection around what I want to remove, then I just have to go and select the area that I want it removed from. And if you're not careful, if you don't select an area that's exactly similar to what you're trying to do, see how you start to get those artifacts inside that circle? And sometimes you can see the circle itself. So you've got to be a little bit more cautious using Lightroom. And it's trying to select this area clear up here. I don't want that. I want, you know, pretty similar to the area where my selection is so that I'm getting the same light. And I don't want to add grass in there if I'm trying to take it away. So that same tool is available in Lightroom, but it does not come anywhere close to working as good as the tools in Photoshop are. But I agree with Jason. This is one that gives you a couple opportunities. You can put the eyes on the, you know, the left third and leave this right third for the tail to run out to the edge. You could go through and take all of that grass out. The other thing that you could do is just bump your whites, just get a little high key. But if you're going to do that, I probably would have left it to where it was, the exposure was a little bit lower, and then pop your whites up. But that's a little bit more high key. You could do a lot with this. This is a great image, Kurt. Good job.
And we also have to remember, it literally was, when we first got these photos sent to us, it was two and a half years ago. Yeah.
Jason, do you want to do that eagle? That's kind of right in your lane.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. I like it. It is right up my alley. I honestly wouldn't mess with the crop at all on this. And personally, I think it was cropped well in camera for what I like. Right off the bat, though, the color tones look right to me in general. I'm going to go ahead and expose a little bit on this thing. And I usually bump my exposure up more, and then I bring my highlights down. I do that quite a bit. But you don't want to go too crazy, because if you see what I'm doing, if you go crazy on the highlights, see how dark and muddy this gets. So there's always a balance, and depends on what you're shooting. With normal landscapes and normal, other animals, bison and elk and whatever, you can get away with a lot of that. But it's always just a balancing act of, exposing, so you can still keep detail in your highlights. On this image, ISO 800, it doesn't look very noisy. Looks actually pretty clean. It was shot at 1/1000 of a second at 5.56 with a 70 to 300 or 75 to 300 millimeter lens at ISO 800, and it was shot at 300 millimeters. So they were pretty close to this eagle. I'm assuming this is a full frame because this is the raw full frame image. I'd probably bump my shadows some here because I want to be able to see some of that detail. And because I'm not going to worry about topaz or anything, matter of fact, I'm going to warm this up just a touch. I think I'm picking up some purples in my whites there, so I'm just going to look at maybe just knocking that down just a touch, warm it up just a little more. And I'm going to go ahead and give it some clarity, not a ton. Or I don't want it to look too much clarity because I think that HD look kind of looks over edited for my personal preference. You can see here this dehaze slider. I actually like to use this quite a bit. For an image like this, usually I would go darker with my dehaze, or I'd actually add some haze, but I'm gonna go back off on it just a little bit because that brings out some of the shadows a little bit more and some of the detail that you can't see. I might add a little bit of texture here just to give it some more detail there in the feathers and stuff. Blacks, let me just see what I want to do there. I might, yeah. But you can see all my adjustments here are really fine. I'm not moving these sliders very much at all. Let's see if we start adding some saturation here. And some vibrance a little bit. Probably don't need to go that much. And then for me, on an image like this, I'm going to go ahead and go look at the detail, and if I need to do any sharpening, I will sharpen on an image that's I'm not taking into topaz, but you can see that's pretty dang sharp. I'm not going to even mess with it. I think it's plenty sharp. So now I'm going to just go ahead and select him, subject, and it should do a pretty good job. Nope, didn't do a great job. Got his head. So I would still come over here and just hit invert. So I'm just going to go to the subtract tool.
So you're just painting out what it missed.
Right. So, and it's super easy to do, right? And it's my computer. We've had this talk before. I need to get a new computer, get it down to something like that. And then for me, I'm obviously going to take and darken that background even more. See the differences there. I'm going to darken it more. We don't want to go too much because we don't want to make it look phony. I'll keep playing with this just a little bit just to make him pop a little bit more. Probably call it good after I darken that background. I might, just after looking at it again, let me warm it up just a touch. And then I might even do like Ron said with the eye. Another trick you can do is zoom in before you do your brush. And you can just add a mask and do the brush tool. Then I might just come over here. I'm going to try that little trick that Ron did here with the iris enhance. I generally try to like make it more contrasty. Maybe add a little bit of clarity. It already did that. And then add a little bit of saturation. It did that. It's just giving a little bit more pop and color to the eye. So now if I close that tool, zoom back out, you can see it just looks a little bit more clear. The eye stands out a bit. Now, and I won't do that again this time, but at this point, I would probably take this over into Photoshop. I would finish like cleaning up. I can see some light area here and some light area here. Those are things I can very easily and quickly take away and kind of clean up and maybe do a little burning around the edges of the animal so it looks a little bit more natural. And then I'd leave it the way it is beyond that. One thing I will add is when you go into Photoshop, you can actually see how there's some dirty feathers and stuff. There's some discoloration in the feathers. You can actually even clean that up too pretty easily with the tools in Photoshop. Not that I would. It's not dirt. It's just part of the eagle. In this case, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just leave it the way it is. You could totally do a lot of that. I mean, you could clean up all this, make this look a little bit more smooth. You could clean up this area here, make the feathers and stuff look like they're a little bit more natural flowing, Sky's the limit. It's pretty crazy what we can do nowadays with these tools.
So, you usually do your editing in silence, and it's really hard to describe your process. But the one thing I do catch myself saying out loud is sometimes when I'm doing these things, I'll just have to go, enhance. It's just me sitting alone in my office talking to myself, but enhance.
Right. Mm-hmm. I've usually got some music playing and, I'm trying to, think of other things while I'm just mind-numbingly editing.
Well, Jason, thanks for sharing your knowledge and going into a couple of those other tools as well. not just Lightroom, but your workflow in Photoshop and Topaz. I think it gives a better picture of what brings you to that end result that everybody's come to enjoy. And again, guys, these are just the tools that we use, but as you can see, Jason and I both use them in different ways to a degree. Obviously, there are some similarities, but Jason, I know that you've got some other tricks up your sleeve as well, right? That we didn't get into tonight.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that just comes into different demands from a photo or different things you're trying to accomplish, obviously. But yeah, there's definitely some other tricks out there to benefit from.
And I think that is important to bring up as we kind of come to a close. Something that you said early on with that first image that you worked on, that leopard coming down out of the tree, is, you kind of showed what we can do with going into the presets, and it gives you a place to start. But every image demands individual attention in some way. We can't just make a one size fits all edit, especially with wildlife, right? And the different seasons, different species, that kind of thing that we tend to photograph.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just to go along with that, I do see there are some people that do kind of run with a predefined type of a filter or a preset that they tend to edit their photos with, and that helps with the aesthetic of their Instagram maybe, or some things like that. But I've really tried to stay away from that and just let the photo, it's going to sound kind of corny, but let the photo speak to me. And I know you're the same way, Ron, to let the photo tell you what it's going to be and not try to make the photo something that it's not. One of the things that I didn't get to mention when I was doing some of the eagle edit and that leopard edit was I really don't want to do something that doesn't make the photo look natural. I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but in other words, like those dark background type images that I do, I really, if I don't already have a dark background, I'm not going to go in there and make it a dark background. I just feel like when you do that, it really stands out. You can tell. And maybe that's just because my skills are weak when it comes to Photoshop and Lightroom. But I really try to just let the image speak to me and tell me what it wants to be. So, there's nothing wrong with presets. There's nothing wrong with those types of tools. But I would just, maybe my word of advice would be, play with them. But don't let the preset thing become something that just makes you lazy when it comes to editing. Learn the tools and let the photo kind of, tell you what it needs to be.
I saw something the other day, and I meant to mention this as we close the last show. But, in talking, as again, just following up on what you just mentioned, Ansel Adams said there are no rules to making great images. There's only great images. So where you want to take this is totally up to you. And, there are certain contests that only allow you to do certain things. You can't remove anything. You can't change anything in the image. But as far as putting something on your wall, there's no rules to that. Wherever it takes you, and you're the artist.
Yep, that's important to remember too. It is art, so don't let that stifle your creativity.
Thank you to those who contributed images, and there were a lot that we didn't get to that we'd like to and probably will in a future episode. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there is I have done some one-on-one. I know Jason's willing to do some one-on-one mentorship as far as editing goes. So please feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to help you get going or to sharpen your skills a little bit. And Mike won't let me say this at the end of our show every time, but we're always trying to raise the quality of our images. So up yours.
I love it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Wild and Exposed Podcast.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed Podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review. And make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way. We will be the biggest band. into town.